I've prepared this demo by storing certificates in Azure Key Vault. I've also stored the same certificates in my personal certificate store. Next, I will show you the wizard on the Azure portal that you can use to create a Service Fabric cluster. We will then be able to track the progress and afterwards validate if the resources were created successfully and if the cluster is operational by using the Service Fabric Explorer. You can see the Azure portal. I'm using the Azure portal to create a new Service Fabric cluster. I need to fill in some values in the wizard so my cluster will be configured correctly. First, I need to provide the name, and this must be unique for the region I want to deploy to. Then I need to specify administrator credentials I can use to log on to the machines later if needed. As the resource group, I will just copy and paste the cluster name. This screen will now be validated and the next screen will appear. In this screen I can configure the cluster. For instance, I can select node type count. Each node type will be one VM skill set. For this demo I will just use one node type. I will call it primary and I will use the durability level bronze. I will select the D1 V2 standard VM size. For my demo this will be sufficient. As the reliability tier, I will select bronze so I can create a test cluster. A test cluster is capable of running on 3 nodes, but it should not be used for production purposes. I will also expose port 80 so I can run a web server on my cluster later, and port 443 so I can access my web server using SSL as well. And now I need to configure security settings for the cluster. This is where I get to use the certificates I uploaded to Azure Key Vault earlier. I will copy and paste the values I received when adding the certificate to Azure Key Vault. The certificate thumbprint will allow Service Fabric to find the certificate from the store later on. Please note that the Key Vault and the cluster must be in the same subscription. When I click OK, I will be presented with a summary view so I can validate if all my settings were entered correctly. This looks okay, so I'm gonna click Create to start the deployment of my cluster. By clicking on the bell, I can see that my deployment has started and resources are being created. If I click on it, I can see the progress of the deployment. By scrolling down, you can see for each resource whether they are created or not. Most resources have already been created, and I'm just waiting for the primary skill set to be finalized. I can already navigate to the resource group and see the resources. By clicking on the Service Fabric cluster resource, I get some information about the cluster. You can see that my cluster consists out of 3 nodes. They are already up and running. The cluster is ready for use. I can click on the Explorer button now to go to the Service Fabric Explorer. To authenticate myself, I need to present the certificate I uploaded to Key Vault and stored on my local machine. I'm now selecting it from the list of the certificates that are present, and I will allow it access to the private key. It will be used to identify me as the cluster administrator. You can see that the cluster is currently healthy. 3 nodes and no applications running yet. These are the system services that already have been deployed and make up the cluster itself. We have now deployed a healthy Service Fabric cluster and we can start deploying applications to it.